Good evening and welcome to the April 14th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. I call this regular meeting to order. I would like to ask staff to proceed with roll call.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. This is Pugh Ghosh, Planning Manager, sitting in for Ben Fu. Commissioner Saxena?
Present.
Commissioner Takahashi?
Here.
Commissioner Fong?
Present.
Vice Chair Wang?
Here.
Chair Moore?
Present.
Thank you.
This meeting is being conducted pursuant to provisions of the Brown Act and recent executive order issued by the governor to facilitate teleconferencing to reduce the risk of COVID-19. Transmission at public meetings. Ordinarily, the Brown Act sets strict rules for teleconferencing. The governor's executive order has suspended those rules. The executive order does require that we continue to notice meetings in advance. The city has met all of the applicable notice requirements. Members of the public may offer public comment by email to, I just have at Cupertino.org. So does staff have an addition to this email address?
Yes, Commissioner. Yes, Chair Moore. The correct email address would be planning@cupertino.org.
Okay,
so if anybody has any public comments, they can email that during this meeting and it will be read out.
Excellent, thank you. So please email to planning@cupertino.org prior to the close of the public comment period for each agenda item. Staff will share all such comments with the commission subject to the time limits applicable to public comment and make them part of the record. Now we will begin with item 1, which is approval of the minutes. The subject is the draft minutes of March 10th, postponed from March 24th. The recommended action is the approval or modification of the draft minutes of March 10th, 2020. So please take a moment to review the draft minutes of March 10th, 2020. Thank you.
Motion to approve.
I second. So will Madam Clerk please conduct the vote?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vice Chair Wang, how do you vote?
Yes. Approve.
Commissioner Fong?
Approve.
Commissioner Saxena?
Approve.
Commissioner Takahashi?
Abstain.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Abstain. I was not present at the meeting.
Thank you. Chair Moore?
Aye.
Thank you. The excuse me, the motion to approve the minutes passes. 4-1, abstention, Takahashi.
Okay. We now move on to oral communications. Do we have any oral communications? This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter within the jurisdiction of the commission and not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. I'll be holding up a timer to let you know how far along you are. In most cases, state law will prohibit the commission from making any decisions with respect to a matter not on the agenda. So staff, do we have anyone for oral communications?
Yes, we have one. We have one email for oral communications.
Okay.
It's from Connie Cunningham. She says, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, and City staff, and everyone that's on the Zoom in the audience. Thank you for everything you are doing to flatten the curve of COVID-19 in our area. Unemployment has been sudden and with uncertain end. A big question is to how to help those who are unemployed due to COVID-19. If you have wondered how you could be of help, consider this idea. If we want our hairdressers, barbers, as well as house cleaners and yard workers to make it to the other side of this economic downturn, we have a way to help them directly. I'm talking to my friends about paying their hairdressers, barbers, as well as house cleaners and yard workers, even though these workers must shelter in place like the rest of us and cannot provide their usual services. They're closed for business, and who knows if or when they will be able to reopen. In addition, you may have a favorite small restaurant where you have dined many times. You are afraid they may go out of business. You, like me, may be afraid to even get takeout because you are in a high-risk category. One idea is to write a check to that small business owner for the amount of an average meal you have enjoyed there. If you want to dine there after the downturn is over, it's something you can do to help tide that business over. Excuse me. I have read a quote during these trying COVID-19 times that we may not be able to help everyone, but everyone can help someone. If your own income has not been impacted by the loss of your job or wages, reach out to your own service providers. Pay them what you would normally pay them or as much as you can. This crisis will end. We will get through it together.
Is that all?
That's all. Thank
Okay.
you.
Chair Moore,
Thank-
this is Pew. I wish to also let you know that Connie has her hand up as an attendee as well. I believe she had some time left, and I'm not sure if she has any comments to add to that.
Okay. So I will unmute Connie. You have a minute and a half to continue speaking. All right. Proceed. Thank you. Welcome, Connie.
Well, good evening. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, and City staff, and everybody who is assembled on this video. I would have, I like to present my own oral communications, but I think that Beth did a beautiful job. I just wanted to re-impress on everyone that we can sometimes feel overwhelmed. We can feel like there's something that what can we possibly do? And particularly for those of us who haven't lost our jobs, who haven't had a reduction in wages. If there are people that you are concerned about, especially small business people, like your hairdressers, your manicurists, your gardeners, and small business owners, please give them their regular pay, just like you always have. Give that restaurant owner a check in the amount, including tip, of any of the type of meal that you would have enjoyed there were it not for the COVID. And so I just wanted to just add my my own words to that. But I do thank Beth. She did a very nice job.
All right.
And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Connie. Okay. Now, do we have any written communications from staff?
Chair, no, we do not have any written communications other than the one that Beth mentioned for item number 2.
Excellent. Okay, and so we have no items for consent calendar, and we move on to the public hearings. Item 2, the subject is use permit and architectural and site approval to allow the conversion of 2 existing retail buildings to a preschool and after-school program with associated site modifications to provide for required outdoor play facilities. Application number U-2019-006, ASA 2019-010, applicant Devin Nambudiri, Griffin Creek, location 10041 North Blaney Avenue and 20015 Stevens Creek Boulevard, assessor's parcel number 316-23-036 and 316-23-093, postponed from the March 24th, 2020 meeting. The recommended action is that we conduct the public hearing and find, 1, that the project is exempt from CEQA, and 2, approve the applications per the draft resolutions. The Planning Commission decision is final unless appealed. So we'll begin with a staff report.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Oh, I think I was going to hand it over to John Martier, Senior Planner, who will make that presentation for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pew. John Martier, Senior Planner, and let me share my presentation with you, which should be ready to go right about now. Can everyone see that okay? Good. All right. Thank you. Again, good evening. This is the use permit and ASA for the Vidyaram preschool and after school located at the addresses and parcels that were previously mentioned by the chair. Let's see here. Good. So again, the project request is for a use permit and architectural site approval to allow the conversion of 2 existing retail buildings to a preschool and after school program with associated site modifications to provide specifically for the required outdoor play facilities. So as you can see right here, the lots that are outlined in red are the parcels that are proposed to have the preschool and after school, specifically the buildings that are with the blue star on top of it. They are 2 separate parcels, but they are jointly owned by the same owner, and the rear 2 buildings are the ones that will be jointly used as the preschool and after school program. As you can see, the proposed use is within a mixed use of an area with primarily office uses to the west, single family homes to the north, and multifamily and retail to the east. The southern building was the Sean restaurant, is now another vacant retail spot. A little bit of background, the 20015 Stevens Creek Boulevard building was a music store up until recently, about 3 to 5 years ago. And the 10041 Blaney Avenue building was a convenience market, Q-Mart, which I believe closed about 7 to 8 years ago. One of the first things we look at with any building or development along Stevens Creek Boulevard is to see whether the proposed use or the proposed project meets the requirements of the Heart of the City specific plan. For buildings that front the boulevard, no more than 25% of the building frontage can be non-retail, while 50% of the rear of the building that fronts Stevens Creek Boulevard can be non-retail. As the proposed daycare use or preschool and after school use is within buildings that do not front Stevens Creek Boulevard, they are exempt from that minimum requirement as such, although they still have to go through the use permit and ASA process for what they want to do, as this is still a discretionary use within the municipal code and within the Heart of the City specific plan. So a little bit about the preschool and after school operations. The school will have a total of 120 students with a maximum of 90 preschool and 30 after school students. Originally, the applicant had proposed 126, but because of parking lot restrictions, we're limited to 120 students. The office hours are between 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. With the preschool specifically operating 8:30 to 6, and the after school program operating 2:30 to 6:30, Monday through Friday. They're not anticipated to be operating on the weekends. The hours of operation are well within the 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. restrictions of the CG zone. So a little bit about the site improvements. They will be, per state law, they have to require some type of play area. So they are converting about 5,322 square feet of parking lot and landscape area to play area. They are doing some landscape enhancements within the parking lot area, within the rear of the building, along the western parking lot area, and the front of the building that's along Blaney. We'll call it Building B, the old Q-Mart building. They decided to convert the parking lot, or at least redesign the parking lot to have a roundabout near the play area. This functions as for a couple of reasons. It provides better traffic flow through the rear, and also slows the drivers down once they are around the play area. The applicant is proposing to do some seismic upgrades to the walls of both existing buildings, as both buildings are a little outdated in terms of how they meet the building code for for earthquake standards or seismic standards. Rather, they are proposing to do those seismic upgrades. A couple changes that that staff has recommended that change from the plan sets and that we've already incorporated within the condition of approval is that we are requesting, and this is after discussions with the neighboring property ownership, to add 4 evergreen trees along the west property line, specifically between 4 or 5 of the new proposed trees. And this is to better screen the play area from the neighboring property. The neighboring office building on the neighboring property. And one of the things we had daycare centers along Stevens Creek Boulevard, we have typically require some type of decorative. The applicant have proposed a wood fence, but we would prefer to have that play yard fence be open or decorative. A little bit about the parking analysis. With the addition of the play area, we are losing 18 spots. However, with the amount of students and assuming that the Sean Restaurant building would have no more than 120 seats, as has been with the last few restaurants that have occupied that building, we can see that the 53 spaces remaining could be enough to provide for both those uses. 2 studies we had done through the city's consultants was a traffic and noise studies. The traffic study we saw would, if the site were to in all 3 buildings that with the preschool and after school, you would see almost approximately 1,500 less daily trips with 80 fewer peak morning and 30 fewer peak evening trips than the former convenience market and music store if they were still there. In terms of noise, the proposed daycare activities would create intermittent outdoor noise levels from 50 to 55 decibels at about 25 to 35 feet from the voices in children activities.
John, may I interrupt you for a minute? This is Pew. Your audio is not very audible. It is very choppy. I'm not sure if everybody else is having that issue, but I've heard from one other person that they're having that issue.
Yeah, I'm having the same issue.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, let me.
John, would you mind calling in to, maybe we can share the screen, but maybe have you call in?
Yeah, or you can just turn off the video. That often helps improve the audio.
Right.
Okay. Okay, who do I call into? If that helps.
Let me send you that number. My apologies, but you were basically not audible.
Okay. Do you see the screen okay? Are you guys able to see the presentation okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't, but I'm following along on the PowerPoint that was emailed out. So
Okay, thank you.
I'm having
Yeah, no,
issues.
it looks good.
But
Chair Moore, I request we have a Brady Bunch moment.
Planning Manager Pugh, we are simply waiting for John to call in and get better audio. Is that correct?
That's right, Chair. I apologize. There was a little bit of a technical issue, so he will call in. I'm hoping that will fix the issue. I heard from one other person that they were having the same audio issues. They could not understand what was being said.
Okay, so we'll just wait a moment for that and then we'll continue on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's patience as we get through these challenging times.
I had a question. Is this being broadcast on YouTube on our channel?
It is my understanding that it is being broadcast as it normally is.
Okay, cool. That's interesting.
Oh, just while we're waiting, there were about 19 pages of desk items which we received this afternoon. So if the rest of the commissioners want to be perusing those, if they haven't already gotten a chance, you have a moment now to pull those up and go through them. There was a fairly lengthy letter in there, which if you haven't read, you might want to take a look at, which is new this afternoon.
All right, well, I'm sorry, my phone's not working, so I don't know what to do.
Let's just continue without the presentation and see how.
Sorry about that, guys.
So we are going to continue without the presentation, or I can actually hear you okay now.
Yeah, so my phone is, sorry about that. Okay, so everyone good?
Actually, somebody else can share the presentation at this point.
David, can you hear me?
I can see the presentation, so it's being shared, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Am I coming in clear now?
Yes.
Yeah, the
you're
voice
better.
is,
Yes.
you're
Okay.
audible now, yes.
Let's just move on.
Yes.
Yeah, you could
That's
turn off
okay.
your video. That might help at times.
Okay, so let's see, next slide. Sorry about that again. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to require from the applicant is a pickup and drop-off plan. The drop-off is, again, with that plan, we're going to talk about pickup and drop-off times. And what's proposed is, at least for the preschool, is 8:30 to 10 a.m. drop-off with 4:30 to 6 p.m. pickup. The after-school program will start the drop-off at 12:30 through 3:30 and pick up from 5:30 to 6:30. So you can see that there's not going to be a huge rush of traffic at one single time, but rather intermittently throughout those hour and a half for both uses or whatever, to have parents or guardians come pick up the children. Building B is going to be designated as a drop-off area, not building A or the rear parking lot. So again, the applicant can be designated, as proposed, to designate 2 parking spaces in front of the building as pickup and drop-off stalls. And at no point would the city is going to allow curbside drop-off and pickup on public streets. That means Blaney and/or Stevens Creek Boulevard. Staff's recommendation is to discourage the use of the easement connecting the properties that are to the west during school hours, if possible. And adding 2 more drop-off parking spaces. So per CEQA, this project is categorically exempt per section 15303, a conversion of small structures, and section 15332, infill development projects. Staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt the proposed draft resolutions to A, find that the approval of the project is exempt from CEQA, B, approve the use permit, U 2019-006, and approve the architectural and site approval, ASA 2019-010. And that is my presentation.
Great. Thank you, John. And thank everyone for bearing with a little technical glitch there. So we'll begin now by having some clarifying questions from the Planning Commission to staff. And then I believe we will move to having a presentation from the applicant. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then after that, we'll open it up for public comment, and then we'll come back and do our deliberations later. Okay, so right now, it's clarifying questions from the Planning Commission.
Hi, this is Commissioner Takahashi. I have a question on parking.
Sure.
Okay, so the parking table, there's allocated spaces for the restaurant if and when it opens in the future. Is that how I read that table correctly?
Yes, correct. So, we looked at past business licenses and past approvals for the restaurant in that building. We found that 120 was pretty much the max that they had prior. So as long as they have 120 seats in that building, we think that the parking on site should be enough for the uses between the two buildings.
Okay, so the way it's allocated is 12 for building B, and then proposed 41 for buildings A and the restaurant. Is there a reason you lumped the restaurant with building A? Just curious as to why it's segmented that way versus the way the project is organized.
Yes, well, building A and the Sean restaurant, the former Sean restaurant, are all in the same parcel.
Right. Okay. So reality then is, at least until the restaurant reopens, or if and when it reopens, until that point, there should be a lot of extra parking.
Yes, absolutely.
And that, right, okay. Thanks.
Okay, the next hand up is Commissioner Fung.
Just Commissioner Moore, just as a point of to make, just I'm having all kinds of issues. So I'm watching the video on the public channel, so I'm not able to raise my hand. So I apologize for that.
Oh, yeah, it's all right. I saw that there's no hand there. We'll work around it. We're all very polite. It's going to be fine.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
So next it was Commissioner Fung.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. I think I may actually hold some of them until after we get the presentation from the applicant. But I'm curious if you could speak to, well, I guess, well, I'll defer that question as well. I'm curious if the music store had been redeveloped separately, would that have been treated as a Stevens Creek fronting property or not?
No, it wouldn't have been. Yeah.
So it's only if it were physically actual physical alignment on the street.
So hypothetically, if the applicant had come in and wanted to, instead of having one of the buildings be the Q Mart, he wanted to have the Sean restaurant, and in building A be the as part of the preschool, then he would have had to come in for HOC exception.
Okay. Yeah, and so I guess, and we can talk about this further, but I'm just curious whether the particular selection of having two adjacent parcels, which are, there are two adjacent parcels, but one development that's, I don't know whether that's changing the parcelization because of the ownership of the land or what, but whether there are restrictions that are being modified to allow the development of the former World of Music. I believe the number of parking spaces relative to the size is lower than had it been considered with the building, which is the restaurant today.
Yes, well, if I understand your question correctly, there is a lower parking standard for daycare centers or preschools in that use class than it would be for even general retail. And it's all contingent upon the amount of students which you have. So, for example, they came in originally with 126. We said, well, you have to lower that to 120 so you can meet the parking.
Okay. So I guess I'm just saying if it had been a different application and a different user, whether there was something that was happening differently here. You know, the allocation is 19 spaces toward, well, I don't want to say it. So it's really, I guess it's 7. Is that right? 7 spaces being contributed by building A and 34 by building B in this current plan, which is, given the relative sizes of those buildings, it's not, you know, that's quite a different ratio.
Correct.
Yeah. I think that's all I have to say right now.
Next, we have Vice Chair Wong.
Oh, hey, hi. I think the quick question I had for you was really when we look at, you know, building A versus building B, is it considered, are they the same owners? And then, of course, the Shang restaurant, is that the same owners? I just want to double check that. So,
Yes, all 3. Yes.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. And next, Vikram, Commissioner Saxena.
So the question I had is the large parcel which has a Stevens Creek's address. The actual building involved doesn't have anything fronting Stevens Creek there, right? I just wanted to.
Correct. Yeah, it's all yes.
If it had been a separate part, even have been looking at the heart of the city and other things for this, and I think that's what we're doing here, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
we looked at all the Yeah. Correct.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. I think that helps.
If I may jump into, so had it been a building that if it did not have the Sean building in front of it, it would have been considered as having frontage on Stevens Creek. But because the Sean building is in front of it, that building A is not considered as having frontage on Stevens Creek Boulevard.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Moore, I have one more question. Can I go? Yeah. I also wanted to get a better idea of what exactly is the easement between the 2 lots. How big is it? And and just for my own curiosity, why don't we want them to use it? Like whose easement it is and so on.
Well, it's not necessarily we don't want them to use it or say we can't use it. It's an easement, so they have a right to it. You know, there was discussions between the neighboring property owners, and their concern was traffic cutting through and whatnot. And so, you know, if a parent dropping off, so for example, if a parent's dropping off a kid, but has their office, you know, within a parcel that's connected by the easement, absolutely. I mean, that's the right to do it. We just want to, encourage the daycare users to have their parents just not use the easement as a cut through, and discourage it that way. You know, it's this city is not in a position to say you can't use it at all. It's an easement. They have a right to it, but within the pickup and drop off plan and use plan, that they would encourage the parents not to use the easement if they're just, if they're not using for personal business, if they have in the Western properties. To your other question, like how big is that easement? I believe the easement is probably the width of the driveway connecting the property. That's how much it would be. There's also another easement that runs with the neighboring property to the southwest to access Stevens Creek Boulevard as well. There's a driveway down there.
Okay, thank you.
John, I was wondering if you're able to pull up the architectural site plan, which shows where the playground is and the Q Mart with the driveway.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to pull up the presentation?
Did the presentation have the architect's plan in it?
I do have a site plan. So
okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure. There we go. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, the one on the right.
Okay.
Okay, so you've got existing on the left and proposed on the right, looks like?
Yes.
Okay, great. There's a way that we can enlarge the one on the right a little bit. Is there any way to do that? Maybe just Control plus, I don't know.
Sorry.
Oh, that's actually helpful. I might want to look at that in a second.
Okay.
Well, I was just wondering, with regards to the Q Mart area drop off.
Okay.
That's your building B. So was there any intention? I see you have ingress egress on both driveways.
Right.
So has it been tossed around possibly to have like a one-way entrance on one side and then one-way exit rather than having both in and out? I was just wondering if that was considered.
It was not considered. However, I think that's completely reasonable to require that. There's nothing I don't believe there's anything to gain by having it both entrances being two-way. So if I think it's within our purview to, I mean, if you want to request that of the applicant, you can have the discussion. But
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Okay, great. And then going back to, you had the photograph, the street view. I was wondering if you had a street view that was showing the front of the Q Mart a little more closely. From this view, you can see that you've got the Spanish tile on World of Music, and I know that the Shaw Restaurant also has the Spanish tile. When you look at the Q Mart, you've got a mixture of materials, and there's somewhat faded. And I was wondering if there's any intention or requirement that be made to be more harmonious with the architecture of the buildings beside it, and if that's been studied at all.
So because the applicant wasn't doing anything physically to the building with the exception of adding a few windows and some seismic structural upgrades, we had not asked to have the roof materials be consistent. However, the applicant and the applicant's architect are here, and I think that could be discussed with them directly, and I would ask them of their willingness to have that be the case. Staff does understand your view of having that harmonious, and I believe that's also a fair ask as well. But that can be discussed with the architect and the applicant.
Okay, and I think that it would definitely need an architect's input, given that the roof is slightly different on each, and I don't know if you're looking at just trying to make the color coordinate better, or the age of the materials make it match better or not. But so some input like that, and I think I saw a hand up. Yes, Commissioner Fung.
Yeah, I had one other question. I'm curious if staff had. This was not included in the traffic analysis, but I was curious if you had the normal traffic load on Blaney.
We did not look at that. The traffic analysis was essentially just limited to how much the use would generate in terms of trips to the site and leaving from the site.
Yeah. I understand that. So I'll just comment at this point that I think that it's always a challenge to come up with a reasonable analysis for a property which has been vacant. Sure. So the Q Mart has been vacant for a long time. Although I understand the mechanism that was used in the traffic analysis, I wonder whether about the validity of that. The net effect to anybody who's in the area who cares about the traffic is that those will all be added trips. Mm-hmm. Now that the mitigating side of that is that Blaney is a heavily trafficked road, so it's possible that at that number, or 250 or whatever it is of trips, that may not be significant. But I think that is something that's worth understanding.
Absolutely. So if you want me to explain the traffic analysis, the trip generation analysis rather, it's based off IT standards, which is pretty much a standard that is used by traffic engineers to project how much a use can impact a certain site. When we asked Hexagon to do this, they base a comparison on what would trips look like if this would be still a convenience center and World of Music was still a fully functioning retail portion too, and they compared the two also. And the important part of the analysis for planning staff is that both a convenience market and a retail like the World of Music are prescriptive. They can go in there by right. All they need was really just a business license. So you could have these heavy traffic producing types of uses without ever needing an analysis. And so what we want to see is to say, well, even with this use even with these uses that don't have any discretion, that they would still be could have more of an impact in this proposed use, which is a preschool daycare after school program that is discretionary. And so we want to make sure that there's at least prove that this is actually less of a traffic impact than something that's allowed by right.
So that's understood. I think that I would just comment that my read of the staff report is that traffic is not a concern because it's net negative, when in fact it isn't just by virtue of the fact that these sites have been vacant for a while.
Yeah, and absolutely understood.
I suspect that the traffic on Laney will be in the thousands for those periods of time. So, in reality, it probably is not a matter of huge consequence. But just as a point of the material. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Fung.
I could make a comment here, Commissioner Moore.
Okay, welcome, Commissioner Taka.
Sorry. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to add to that from the standpoint, I don't think it's necessarily the volume as much as the timing, i.e. that it is drop off and pick up, so the traffic patterns are at discrete periods of time, which, like schools, when schools start and when schools are released, that's when you have the traffic at its maximum density, versus the music store and the market are not, they do not follow that pattern. It's spread out over the hours of operation. So it's a very different flow of traffic. And so I guess that's what I'm saying to be mindful of. That's all. Thanks.
I see Commissioner Fung's hand is raised. Commissioner Fung?
Yeah, and I just wanted to pop in that while I was, I noticed that one of the things that was arranged as part of this application was, at 8:30 starting time. Sorry about that. An 8:30 start for drop off. And in fact, the starting time for Collins School, which is just down the street, is 8:40. So I think that that's actually a negative optimization. You're probably putting cars in there at the most busy time and making it difficult for parents as well, who are, who would be having to come later. So I think there's some value in considering actually moving that to an earlier time.
I also see a hand raised by Commissioner Wong, Vice Chair Wong.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair Moore. I think the question I have for staff was really, and I guess maybe we will wait for the applicant for that, but a lot of these services for after schools typically pull drivers that pick up from other schools to get them here for the after school program or to some of that programs. Just wondering if that was factored into the traffic study as well.
My understanding is that the traffic analysis assumes a parent or guardian that's dropping them off, not necessarily van pools or whatever else. Also,
okay, no problem. Yeah, no, because
Can
a number
I
of
comment
these.
on that, Vice Chair Moore, Vice Chair Wang? The traffic study only looks at AM and PM hours. They don't necessarily look at the midday hour, which is when the pool cars would come in. So the traffic study doesn't necessarily factor in the pool cars during the AM and PM peak hour.
Got it, no problem. All right, that's just lunch traffic. So.
All right. Okay, I also saw that Commissioner Saxena's hand is raised.
Yeah, I actually wanted to follow up on what Commissioner Fung had said about the hours. Now, as a working parent, I've had to drop off children much before 8:30 to be in office on time. Was the requirement or was the proposal for 8:30 something the applicant proposed or something the city felt would be better to them follow?
so the hours of operation, the drop off, pickup time.
John, you're cutting out again. Planning Manager Pugh, are you hearing him cut out?
Yes, I do hear him completely cut out, and I'm trying to communicate that with him.
Okay.
Apologies about that. If you could just repeat the question, and I may try to attempt, if you were hearing me clearly, to answer the question.
Yeah, my question was about what Commissioner Fang had also raised. Is the 8:30 requirement something which the city felt should be appropriate, or that's what the proposal is? Because I agree with Commissioner Fang that we could probably even allow them to start earlier if needed, and that's often very convenient.
My understanding is that those hours of operation were proposed by the applicant and were not dictated by the city staff or any of the analysis that we did. As a use in the general commercial zone, they could potentially be allowed to open as early as 7 a.m. Any earlier than that, they would have to apply for a separate use permit for that. And so these were what they proposed in terms of what the applicant proposed.
I'm back.
So they could, in principle, move it back to 7 without requiring any new permits or permissions.
That is
Correct,
I believe
correct.
the use permit
Correct.
is written that way. Yes, sorry, John, I was trying to answer the question while you were out. So yeah, so my understanding is they could open at 7 a.m. if they wish to, no earlier than 7 a.m. So.
Chair Moore, I have one more question. I'm following up on the traffic study. May I go ahead?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So this is just from education again. I think when you say one trip, it includes both coming and going, right?
No trip. It means there's one trip coming, one trip going. So each time you leave, each time you ride,
each come and go is 2 trips. Okay. Okay, that explains it, because I also had thought the numbers were really high, and so okay. Cool. Thank you.
Great. Are there any further questions from the commissioners before we move to the presentation by the applicant?
Chair Moore, I would also like to point out that one could press *9 to raise their hand if they're on the phone. So that might be one way of raising a person's hand.
Okay, so we are moving to the applicant's presentation, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So how do we bring them up for that?
John, are you presenting for the applicant, or is the applicant here to present for themselves?
Hello, this
I
is
think Mr. Nambudiri
Mr. Nambudiri is here.
hello. This is Devin Nambudiri. We are the applicants, and I have a short presentation to better understand our project.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Okay, well, dear members of the Planning Commission, Cupertino city staff, our friendly neighbors, and members of the public who are listening to this. Thank you for tuning in this evening to listen to our proposal on our dream project, namely a preschool at 10041 North Blaney and 20015 Stevens Creek. My name is Devin Nambudiri, as I mentioned. My wife, onto my left, is Sujata, and myself are the owners of this project, and we have been the residents of Cupertino for more than half a decade. It's our dream that we start a branch of our preschool in this city. With that intro, let me get back to my presentation. I will share my screen and we'll go through a few slides. Is that visible for everyone?
Yes.
Thank you. So John has touched upon most of this, and there are some slight changes about the numbers that I need to take to correct. But these are the salient features of the preschool. The location, as we all know, is Stevens Creek and Blaney, those 2 buildings, and the capacity and timings are, total capacity is 126, which is to be corrected to 120. And preschool students will be 96, and the after school will be roughly in the 30, roughly 30 students. And the drop-off timings, as we heard, is from 8:30 to 10, and pickup will be from 4:30 to 6 for the preschool, whereas for the after school, the drop-off will be anywhere from 12:30 to 3:30, and the pickup will be from 5:30 to 6:30. a good amount of staggering there. And the total number of parking exclusive to us is 27. And let me explain that. We had some discussions earlier on that. We have 12 parking spaces in the front. When I say the front, in front of the Q Mart. And we have the remaining parking spaces at the back of the music store. The ones which are by the side it has been shared with the Sean restaurant and another address. Another potential business that is adjoining to Sean restaurant. So we have a total of 27 parking spaces exclusive to us. And the trip generation analysis, as we have discussed, points to lesser number of trips generated had it been used for a typical retail use. But like what we heard earlier, since these two buildings are left vacant for so long, there are no reliable data for for Hexagon to look into. So they were using a typical retail use, and they had some technical numbers for that, and that is what they were using to compare. And the playground, as we know from John's presentation, is approximately 5,000 square feet, and we have 2 classrooms. We will have 2 classrooms, each of 24 kids, maximum capacity, that can use the playground simultaneously. A noise study was conducted, and that points to no noticeable noise from outdoor play activities, even to the nearest neighbors who are about 20 to 30 feet away, with 2 walls from the playground as well as a brick wall. Can I move on? Any questions so far? Okay.
Katie, we can't hear you.
I know, I'm sorry. You have you had 6 minutes left for your presentation, and we'll ask questions at the end of your presentation. So you want to maximize your time. Okay, so I'm going to put 6 minutes back on and let you continue on. Okay, thank you.
So why the school in Cupertino? So a little bit of a history about our preschool. This is the first Indian immersion preschool in the Bay Area, and we have one location in Santa Clara with a capacity of 165 kids. And it has been well received by the community. And the preschool got to 75% of the capacity in less than 4 months, and around 50 children are from Cupertino exclusively. A number of requests from Cupertino to start another school in Cupertino. There were a number of requests, and we already have a few tentative enrollments. And this project will provide about 10 to 12, if not more, a job for 10 to 12 individuals at the least, and jobs are very dear nowadays. Easy childcare access to working parents at major Cupertino tech companies, as we all know. And the current condition of the location is, I have a few pictures depicting the current condition of the dilapidated state of the buildings and surroundings. As you know, in that big bush group over here, there's a homeless camp, and all these things will be landscaped pretty well, and even this area. And I'm going to give you a peek of how it would look like when it's all done. This is an example this is the example. This is the building. This is the preschool that we have in Santa Clara, and the new building will be more or less similar in shape and form. And we have seen the school plan. So we have 2 classrooms in the building B or whatever, and 3 classrooms in the building A in the music store. And the pickup and drop off area will be, all these area will be used for pickup and drop off. And as is shown in the, will be used for pickup and drop off. And these will be mainly used for staff parking. And these 3 will be mostly for parents who want to have a longer conversation with the teachers. And these will be some additional parking which are shared with the Sean restaurant. So that is, Now, we have done a community outreach on the 8th of February, and it was well received. And this is some pictures that I've taken during that time. And further, we discussed this project with the neighborhood watch chair, Patricia McPhee, on February 22nd. And please read her email to the members of the watch, the neighborhood watch program. And she included us in the neighborhood mailing list. We plan to be active. That's all I have. I hope I could make that within 6 minutes.
Yes, well, you still have 2 minutes and 43 seconds left. So are there any questions for the applicant from the Planning Commission?
Yeah.
I'm looking for hands up from any of the commissioners for the applicant. Okay. Okay, and I see Vice Chair Wong.
Yeah, I just random question. I was looking at the map very detailed, and I know you mentioned there's 27 parking spots, but it's a crazy question. Where's parking spot 25 located? Is it missing or something? It's a weird thing on this map for 24. So, oh, I see. It's on the side by the cone, by the circle area. Got it. So you actually have 28 parking spots. It says from what I can tell. That's what I was trying to figure out. So, from your plans. So.
Maybe I have to recount it then.
Yeah, no problem. I was just checking on it, but I think you have 28 parking spots. And then the other question I have for you is, in terms of the shielding and the noise. What I know that you mentioned that you put you've done something to help eliminate some of the noise along the way for potential, I'd say the business residents, business tenants that are there. How did you test the sound levels for that? So,
well, there was a noise study done by professionals appointed by Cupertino, suggested by Cupertino Planning, and they have. If we get into the specifics of the study, we can see that they have put 3 places. They have used 3 locations, and they have some models for typical playground noise, and they were comparing that together with the noise from Blaney traffic, and they have some way of accumulating it, and then they were measuring the noise maybe 30 feet away from the cone at the north, I believe. And they found that with the brick wall on the side and another potential wall from our end will reduce the noise levels by, will be 5 dB less than the allowed limits. And 5 dB, the number looks small. dB, all those who are technical know that dB is a logarithmic unit, and 5 dB is, in fact, I'm a research engineer. I have been working last 5 years to get the the signal to noise ratio up by 3 dB. And I spent 3-4 good years on that, and still I couldn't achieve that. So 5 dB is a lot. That's what I want to point to. So yeah, that is for the people who are just north of the building, the Q-Mart, and the people to the west, they are much further away, about 100 plus feet away. The noise to them will be much lower.
Got it. Thank you.
And more details of that report is available with John.
Right. Commissioner Fung?
Yeah, I had a question. There was a letter from the management company that handles the Arbor Professional offices next door that said that you had reached an agreement with regard to use of the parking that was adjacent to their facility. And I was just curious if you could talk about what the agreement was.
Absolutely. So if I may share my screen. So over here, we have all these parking spaces that weren't mentioned as pick up and drop off. So we are going to make all of them as 1 hour parking. There is no concept of drop off for kids of much younger kids. Parents have to accompany them all the time. So all these parking spaces are going to be short-term parking. That is one agreement that we have. And the parkings over here, they were wanting us to have, in order to minimize the traffic along this, So this will help a long way in minimizing the traffic here. And the second part is that all these parking spaces will be reserved for the staff, which means that they will be coming in the morning and they will be leaving in the evening. So the amount of traffic along this will be much lower. And the remaining, those who are intermittently coming, in the sense, those who are overflowing from here, they or those who want to meet the staff here, remember that the front of this building is somewhere here. So everybody who is coming over here will have to come for, so in order to access, to get this place, the most easy, I explained to her that the most easy parking space for them, for those who are coming here, is over here, and that was acceptable, that was understood. So with all that, the parking, what do you call, the traffic along this and people going towards this area will be much lower, and she was convinced about it. And the other question that she had was, what if when we run an open house or things like that, there'll be a lot of traffic, there'll be a lot of parking requirement, and will that cause any difficulties for the parking around here? The answer was no, because from our experience with Santa Clara, where we have a capacity of 165, and we have been, we have done open houses and we have done various events, and there we have an exclusive parking of 27 and some adjoining parking like this, maybe another 10. So we have altogether about 37, 38 parking spaces, and with a person standing there to pack the cars, we could park up to 40, 45 cars. And that was enough to cater for such big events. So the same thing here, if you look at, we have 40 plus parking spaces, this area, this, over here, and there are some here as well. So with all that, there is absolutely no chance of traffic overflowing to this area, and she was convinced about it.
Thank you.
Next, we have Commissioner Saxena, and then I don't know if Commissioner Takahashi has a question, but I will call on you right after Commissioner Saxena.
Yeah, I actually wanted to go deeper into the discussions which you have had with the neighbors. We got an email saying that, hey, you agreed on a few things. So if you could just briefly touch upon what else stuff you have already agreed on, and if there's anything else you want to add to what has been shared with us.
Yes, I have a document that we both agreed on. We maybe now or later I can forward it to you. So she had a list of comments, and I have the document right in front of me. So if I can pull up the request that was sent to the planning department, unless you have it already with you.
We have the email from her.
Okay, so my answers for, if you can look at her mail, her document, my answers to them were 1A, okay, we can do. 1B, okay, we can do. 1C, okay, we can do. Will that clear to you, or do I need to go?
Yeah, no, that's okay. A brief summary is fine. Yeah.
Okay, and 1D, same as item 1C, it was a replication of her email, and we can do that. And 1E can consider, and we have discussed that. And 1F was about that I explained to you about the full, when there is a
open house, yeah.
Overflow, yes. And 1G, we said no, and 1H, we said no, and 1I, we have discussed, and about the speed bump, we have discussed, and I explained the difficulties, and she was convinced about it, but we will be working on it. And 1J, no, and 2A, no, and 2B, it's about trees, which John has made as a condition. And these were the questions, and these were the answers, and she was convinced. And we had some discussions over 2-3 days, and we all agree to that, and we are all happy, loving neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify for people who are watching this at home, this is part of the desk items, PDF 12 of 19, which we received this afternoon. And we have Commissioner Takahashi.
Yeah, I guess more of a comment than a question at this point in time, and that is that there was an applicant, I want to say probably 6 years ago. It was a Montessori preschool on Stevens Creek in the 20,000 range. They had a playground, and they had a neighbor that was very concerned about noise from that playground. So kind of similar from the standpoint of some of the things I've read in terms of concerns. And the only reason I bring this up is because since then, I don't believe, and maybe the city, Hui or John can assess, have there been any noise complaints associated with that specific applicant? I think it was 20111 Stevens Creek. And so just thought it would be helpful for people to have a little history on a very, very similar situation that I think has worked out just fine. That's all I wanted to say.
All right. Thank you, Alan. And are there any more questions from the commission for Devin, or are we complete? And then we will move on to the public. I don't see any more hands raised. Okay. So for our attendees, we have an individual whose phone number ends 4172. I am going to press allow to talk, and you will get 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, this is Jennifer Griffin. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you. This has been an interesting presentation, and teleconferencing is a very interesting thing that we're doing. I'll just make a comment. I live in the eastern part of Cupertino near Valco, and I have started using Blaney a lot to get over to Homestead because some of the challenges over the years with Tantau, and then, of course, we had parts of Wolf closed in the last week. I will say right now that Blaney is already at gridlock at various times of the day. When I come back in the afternoon, you have the elementary, or I think it's a middle school that is down near 85. When you come through there by the PG&E site and up, there's a lot of traffic there. And many times when I have come going, it would be south on Tantau Blaney to get down to Stevens Creek Boulevard, it is complete gridlock when I have approached the intersection there. I think that I'm really glad that someone is going to be putting something in the Q-Mart and that site because it has been empty for a very, very long time. But I would suggest that any drop-offs of the children be confined to on-site and not have anything. I would minimize any entrances and exits from the Blaney side because it is already at gridlock. Many times as I'm approaching Stevens Creek Boulevard, the left turn lane onto Stevens Creek Boulevard backs up onto Blaney, and we're already sitting, you'll have 7 to 10 cars there turning left at various times of the day. I think we need to be mindful now, especially since there's no traffic anywhere, that if they could have a lot of the daycare traffic doing entrance and exit from Stevens Creek Boulevard, I think that would be one of the best plans for this site. I'm also concerned about how they're handling the drop-off and pickup. I think it might coincide with the school that's there. Also, there's a lot, because of the new apartments across the street on Blaney where the hamburger shop is, that's a whole nother, so much traffic there and congestion. I just think that we need to make sure that anything that we're doing at this Q Mart location, that we're not throwing more cars into the traffic on Blaney. Also, what about people that are waiting to pick up children? Where will they park? I hope they're not going to be parking and sitting along Blaney. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right. And I don't see further hands raised from the public. Yes, I do. Okay. Julie, I believe it's Mersick. And hold on a second. I've got to set the timer and then I will begin. All right. Okay. Welcome, Julie. Are you there, Julie?
Yes.
Okay,
Hi.
welcome. I'll start your timer. You have 3
I'm
minutes.
not sure if I had a separate time with through John. I represent the neighboring property, Arbor Professional Center, 200-4565 Stevens Creek Boulevard. And we have 23 tenants in the building that have high technology use and need peace and quiet in the space, and are paying rent in order to have that peace and quiet there and expect it to continue. So we're very concerned for the viability of the office building about having this tenant there. We have had several calls with Devin, the applicant, and are working towards an agreement, but there's still a number of open issues. I sent my letter out on Thursday at 4:30 to the commissioners. It sounds like you didn't get that until today as a desk item. But we have a number of items on there that are still wide open, need to be addressed. We've come to agreement on the parking in the front on Blaney. The 1 hour visitor is great because the applicant says 90% of the drop off and pickup will be there. We'd like to see that continue. But we're more concerned with the rear of the property where we have a property line with 20045 Stevens Creek Boulevard. And I think John has some photos that I sent him. I don't know if those are available to view.
I can, if you don't mind, I can share right now if you're okay, share more.
Please do. Thank you, John.
So should I continue or? Yeah. Okay. So this is a view of that rear parking lot. And this is looking at it from the northernmost corner next to Arbor Professional Center, I believe. And where you see that light standard and the big bush there in front, that's where the new trash enclosure will be. And then you're looking into the restaurant building there off in the distance. So what we want to do is we want to encourage any traffic that comes through this roundabout to come through and go out towards either Stevens Creek or Blaney. And you can see right there to the right of the restaurant building, there is a lane where their traffic can go out that way, but we want to encourage that. We would like to see the applicant put up signs. So 2 things. One is at the end of the parking lot here, we'd like to see them put a no right turn sign. We discussed this with John. He said, the applicant said he might be willing to do this, but has not committed to it. So we would like to ask the city to encourage that, so that there's no right turn from anyone circling through the roundabout. So they're discouraged from going through the neighboring property to get out to Stevens Creek. And it might also be helpful to have a sign right in front of this pathway by the restaurant, so that people coming out of this parking lot could be directed, a sign directing them towards Stevens Creek Boulevard. So we want to really do what we can to encourage car traffic to go out either Blaney or Stevens Creek and not turn right. This is very busy easement already because it services 3 other properties down the line besides Arbor, 2 more, including the one that has the Chinese Mandarin immersion preschool.
Okay, Julie.
So there's a lot of activity on this easement.
Okay, excuse me, Julie, your 3 minutes are up. Do you have some closing statements that you want to make, or did you finish?
Yes, I would like to say that we are interested in having a fence put onto the property line by the applicant in order to protect our private property rights on the rear part of the property where we have an open parking lot right next to the play yard.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, so I'm moving on to our other public participants. I do not see any other hands raised from the public. Okay, so I'm going to move back to the commissioners. And do I see any hands raised from the commissioners?
Excuse me, Chair Moore, I'm sorry. We
Yes.
do have an email that came in.
Okay.
For oral communications. I'm not going to be pronouncing the name well. Sorry about that in advance.
Okay, no problem.
This email came in about 6:15 this evening, and it says, to members of this Cupertino City Planning Commission, I'm sending this note regarding the preschool proposal and will try to attend the meeting today. My children attended the family daycare when it operated in Arata Way in Cupertino. I'm excited at the prospect of a larger preschool project in Cupertino. I believe that this will be a good addition to the community and provide more choice to parents looking for a good quality, dependable preschool. Regards, Eswaran Raman.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, so seeing no further attendees, participant comments for oral communications, we're going to bring
There
it
is
back.
there is a Gayla May with a hand up.
Correct. That is the applicant, I believe. Is that correct? Can staff?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'm the owner.
The owner. Okay, so could staff please direct me? Our regular procedure would be to go back to the planning commissioners to speak. Do I go back to the owner, or are we strictly looking at the planning commission at this point?
Commissioner Moore, have you closed the public hearing at this point?
Yes, at this point we have closed the public hearing. We have all of our public comments have been allowed to speak, and so we're moving back, ordinarily.
I will defer to the city attorney in this matter. You may have to reopen the public hearing in order to take Ms. May's comment.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, good evening, Chair. I believe there was a third option for participation, given that this is a webinar, live participation. So if Ms. May is raising her hand to participate and intends to do so during public comment, it would be, you should reopen it to allow that comment.
Okay, so we're reopening public comment, and Ms. May will get the 3 minutes to speak. All right, so I'm going to set the timer.
Thank you. My name is Gayla Johnson, so anybody can address me as Miss Johnson. Thank you so much, and thank you for this meeting. I wanted to raise my hand only after Julie's comments because I'm 4th generation owner of this property. And for, I think 20 years, we've had a problem with the 23 business units next door, particularly the business of Kids Cab, that I've almost had to get into a lawsuit with over this last year because they go through my easement at 50 miles an hour. The Kids Cab has almost run me over and injured me along with my children who were doing property management cleanup. So the city needs to highly look and investigate Julie's comments because the 23 businesses use my easement and endanger my property and my tenants for the past 20 years. Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't hear you.
You still have 2 minutes to speak, Ms.
So
Johnson.
yeah, I would just like the city to really evaluate the easement. I really disagree with the city discouraging the preschool to use the easement because as a property owner, the easement is legally the rights of my lease's rights. So the term easement means we're both allowed to use it. So I'm really perplexed by why the city is discouraging the use of the easement when the 23 businesses that use the easement to come into my building use it on a regular basis as a speedway. So that is something that needs to be evaluated, and Miss Julie is very aware of the situation. So I'm appalled that she's bringing up these subjects because I've been very kind with the speeding that's going through my parking lot. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And seeing no further hands from the public, I am closing the public hearing portion. We're bringing it back to the commissioners for discussion. And do I have any commissioners with their hands up at this point? Commissioner Fung?
Sure, I'll go. So I have three areas that I wanted to talk about. The first one is with regard to the traffic analysis. I actually raised this earlier. I think that it's a little misleading the way it was represented in the staff report. I actually suspect that there's not really an issue here, not really a major issue, but the procedure that was used, which kind of looks at what would another qualifying use in that location could have been. It just needed to be conveyed more clearly in the report. So I think that, if the statement is relative to retail or office use or another use that was permitted in that area, this would generate less traffic. I think that that's certainly fair. But right now it reads in that there's a reduction of many hundreds, 1,469 fewer trips. I think that it would be hard for anybody to actually see that because there are no trips going to those areas now. I do think that, and again, this is just a point for the future. I don't think this is something that would sway my vote on this issue. I think that it would be valuable when this is an issue if we could include the best information that we had about the normal use on Blaney. My number 2 point is actually related to the hours, the agreement around drop-off time. I think that that's actually problematic the way that it's put together right now. I served for a number of years on the Safe Routes to School Committee in Cupertino, and one of the schools that's had challenges in the past has been Collins, because Blaney is pretty narrow, highly congested, and they've had to take some very extreme measures. The prior principal, he retired last year, but the prior principal used to go out and direct traffic every morning. Basically, he said the only way they could make a manageable situation there was because everybody was afraid of the principal. So I would strongly suggest, I think, the starting times for schools have moved later because of state regulation. I would strongly suggest that you consider allowing, setting the hours such that parents have an opportunity to drop off a little earlier. I think you're just talking, 8 o'clock or maybe a quarter till 8. In that kind of time frame, there's an opportunity there where a lot of parents, I think, would prefer to drop off at an earlier time, dodge the traffic, and that'll be better for everybody, I think. And then I guess I would say also in conjunction with that, Collins not only is one of the larger schools in CUSD today and has a traffic problem just because the roads are tight, but that is also an area that's subject to change in the future based on other things happening in the area. The third item is only about concerns I have around, and I raised this a little bit in the prior session as well, around the considerations and restrictions that were placed on, whether there's some manipulation of how the parking needs how the parking need was calculated. I think that manipulation is probably not a great way to say it, but there was a need that was calculated, and I think had there been any other kind of use coming into that, into that site, and now we're kind of talking about the building, which was the one with the Stevens Creek address. I think it would have been difficult for them to have only had a requirement of 17 or so parking spaces relative to the amount of space there. So I would just encourage, that we do things that, that there be some equity in terms of the requirements on this particular use versus others. Again, I don't think that this is a showstopper. It's just it just jumps out a little bit that the parking requirements, assuming, I don't know, it's hard to tell whether Shan Restaurant, there's mention about it not being open. I don't know whether that's not coming, whether that restaurant is closed as a business or whether it's just closed because of the shelter in place. But, I think that the restrictions that come from the normal use there seem like they would be a little bit higher. Now, I understand there's a trade-off here. The parking requirements lower. Obviously, preschool kids are not driving to the preschool, and there is a requirement for the play space. So maybe it all balances out. But I just think in terms of looking at different possible uses there, that we want to try to be fair about that. And that was it for my comments.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Fung. Next, we have Commissioner Saxena.
Yeah, I had two comments. One is that with all the housing coming up in that part of the city and with the proximity to the employers there, I think it would be great to have the preschool here and some of the old used building actually come alive. To John, easement stuff. So I brought that up earlier, and I think there's been a pretty heated discussion. Could you shed some light on what's the law and how is it supposed to operate, and if we were to have any mitigation on both sides, what could proper civil ideas be?
Sure, and the city attorney, if he feels fit to jump in, feel free to do that. Easement's an easement. We as a city can't, if it's a legal easement, we can't have policies or add conditions that would eliminate the owners or any of the user of the space or the site rather to use that easement. Hence the reason why we said, hey, possibly discourage if it brings some, not equity, but if it brings some harmony between the neighbors and to mitigate any potential traffic issues between the sites, use that. The Planning Commission does not see fit to add that in there. We can always amend that condition of approval. Now that you've heard both sides yourselves, the property owner is right. Actually, the property owner of the daycare area is right that it is legal easement. Again, they have a right to use it as much as the neighboring Arbor Center owners and their tenants have a right to use it as well. However, again, we do want to see harmonious relationship between the neighbors, and we do want to see a limited amount of traffic impact between the sites. And so it was brought up as part of a condition of approval to discourage, not eliminate, but discourage parents from dropping off to use that easement if they're not having any business with the neighboring properties, or if they're to discourage them from using it as a cut through.
Commissioner Saxena, do you have some more questions?
No, that's it. Thank you. I just wanted to get the legal aspect of it clear.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Vice Chair Wong.
Hey, thanks, you. So the question for me is really around, I know there were some mitigations that were requested. I was kind of curious if someone had put a cost structure on what a fence would look like, what signs would cost, what speed bumps might be. And I guess it's between the two property owners to figure out who would pay for that if they wanted to do that. I just didn't know if they'd come out to the cost structure. And I think the question I have to staff or even to the applicants or the neighbors is whether this was an issue of cost or just an issue of principle, just to get an understanding. So.
Do you want me to answer that, Vice Chair?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can answer that. If
No,
you know the answer, I didn't know who knew the answer. So
for us, it's not a matter of cost. At least for the issue of the fence around the play area for us was just consistency with prior policy as to having not a more decorative fencing, especially particularly along those daycare centers and the Stevens Creek Boulevard. I know Commissioner Takahashi mentioned the Montessori School at 20111 Stevens Creek Boulevard. They have a decorative fence, and that's the last one we've actually approved 5 years ago around their play area. It would look something like that. That's what staff envisions. In terms of fence between the properties, we've always discouraged as much as possible fence between properties, unless it's between a residential use and non-residential use. In that case, Heart of the City does require one. Other than that, there's no language within the zoning or within the municipal code or the Heart of the City that says that you have to have a fence at all, or that we could require them to have a fence. So if they want to have a fence between the property owners, but we typically discourage fences between properties that are, if they don't entail like a residential use.
and is the dominant easement the property owner, that the applicant?
I would think the dominant, meaning that I would think it would be Seth, you probably might help with dominant against non-dominant. I think the
dominant versus servient.
The arbor center would be the dominant, and the servient would be the daycare or the preschool.
Got it. Okay. Site. Just wanted to make sure I had that clear as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Takahashi.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to kind of tick back through some of the points that were met and comment on them. So I already commented on noise and my perspective on the noise of children playing. On the easement discussion, I think this warrants a little bit more discussion from the standpoint of I kind of understand the situation a little better than I did previously based on the owner's comments in the public comment. Because you can see when you look at a map that a lot of people are going to use that easement to get to Blaney so they can go left onto Stevens Creek or east or go left on Blaney versus going out and then going right or west on Stevens Creek. So I would imagine there is a fair amount of traffic using that easement. And given we are talking about a preschool, there should be some level of concern about people using that easement at a higher rate of speed. So should some level of traffic calming be put in and not necessarily driven by the owner? It's private property, but it's being, it's driven by adjacent property owners. So not quite sure how the city would look upon this, because I know the city definitely encourages connecting lots and having those easements to provide freer flow of traffic. But if it's a relatively high volume and it's at higher speeds and it's during the pickup or drop off and it's a preschool, that's something that I think should be taken into consideration. So I guess I'm sympathizing with the owner in this specific situation that if indeed there's some high speed traffic coming through that point, that something needs to be looked at to address that. From the parking, I guess I would say I'm marginally concerned about that, just from the standpoint of it'll be fine until there's occupation of the restaurant, and then at which point in time it might be a problem. But at this point, it is what it is. And with regard to the traffic, this is not going to make it any better. I mean, they're vacant buildings right now, and so during the school year, I think it will be adding to the traffic backups. And I guess I would agree with what Commissioner Fung's comment was. I think there's probably will need to be some level of flexibility with regard to the applicant and start times, just from the standpoint of working to avoid the peak times, which are short but very intense for schools, generally speaking. So I would recommend that. Understand that there are potential issues with requiring a start time that's earlier from the standpoint of staffing and cost associated with those hours of operation. So obviously that's something that needs to be traded off with that. But it's one of those things where we don't want to hear in the fall, assuming schools open back up in the fall, and or when the preschool opens, that we've got big traffic problems. So some level of way to make sure we can come back and or the city has some level of ability to come back and try to optimize that traffic flow. The public comments were predominantly positive in support. I generally think good preschools are an asset to the community. They are seen as contributing to the education of the youth and are of benefit. So, from that perspective, I think it's a good project. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Takahashi, and all the commissioners have very well stated. I don't want to repeat the comments about the easement and safety and adequacy of parking. With regards to traffic, I think, I share Commissioner Fung's concern about the baseline. However, we are all pretty knowledgeable about the traffic on Blaney, and it is pretty heavy right now. I agree with staggering in any way that you can, staggering the pickups and drop-offs. One thing that that is going to be different from this project is, as opposed to the World of Music, and all my family members have had lessons there in the evening and after school, right? So there was traffic coming through there for that. There is also a dance studio right next to the restaurant as well. So there, I would assume there's going to be traffic from that. I would like to, because we've been discussing the fence, if you could pull up the plan again and point to this fence that's in question, I'd like to hear about that. And also with regards to Kids Cab, do you have some knowledge about that? How much traffic there is, or what's the nature of the business? I have a general idea. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. And I would also like to echo what Commissioner Takahashi said about the need that we have for providing these types of services in the community and the daycare facilities. We definitely are in need of that, and the applicant has established this as well. So, John, will you show us where that fence is that we're talking about, please?
So, can you guys see my cursor? Just confirming.
Yes.
Okay, so the fence around the play area right here, where they're proposing a 6-foot wooden fence, we're proposing something more decorative, similar to what's at 20111 Stevens Creek Boulevard. That's right here. My understanding, well, not my understanding, but my understanding is that what the Arbor Center wants is some type of fencing that's right between the property along here. Again, as staff, as policy, we typically want to discourage it. We want to see, the properties open up as much as possible. There's no requirement for a fence as part of any type of land use regulation. And the way I've looked at it is the neighboring property owners would kind of a private issue a little bit. Again, although we do, like I said, discourage as much as possible. If we have the chance, any discretion at all, it's pretty much discouraged to have a fence between the properties.
Right.
Chair Moore, this is Pew again, and if you permit me to also explain that the parking lot in question of the neighbor is almost 100 feet away, and to have to have a child walk all the way over there as a practical matter is not something that we would see. And as the applicant has explained, that these back parking spaces are purely for employees. And like I said, from a practical matter, and having a toddler myself, that would not be the choice of where somebody would wish to park to put the child.
Thank you, both Pew and John. Are the trees along the property line are going to remain? For instance, I saw an approximately 50-foot long needle pine tree, which it looks like it is exactly on the property line with the neighbor to the west. That is going to remain, is that correct?
Yeah, the only landscaping that's going to be removed are actually bushes. No trees are part of this permit. If they were, they would have had to apply for a tree removal permit. So they're planting more trees than been bushes being taken out. So no trees are being proposed to be removed.
Okay, so if they were to put a fence along that property line, they would be removing what looks like a 50-foot long needle pine tree. And so with regards to privacy issues, that's a huge tree that is providing privacy now, which would go away. And then also I noted that the windows don't open on the Arbor building.
Right.
So because I was concerned that, there could be noise coming through, should they have their windows open, but they are not operational. And the stairwell on the east side of the building has solid doors. So I was, concerned that perhaps sound would echo through some kind of an inner courtyard, which they don't have. So that also was something I was concerned about, but when I went to go do a site visit, I didn't see it. And I see that Vice Chair Wong has his hand raised.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I did a site visit when I walked through there. I mean, I really had to be very desperate if I had to cross that northern pass, where the parking lot is, to cut across. So, I mean, if I was if I was Arbor, if I really, really wanted to, I could just plant a tree there and see what would happen, right? I mean, it's one of those kind of things. But yeah, it doesn't seem like it needs a fence. And also did the same thing, was testing for sound to see what would happen. It appears the playground is on the northern part of the parcel, and if there's any reflection, I'm surprised the northern part of those neighbors have not raised any issues. So that would probably be the only concern that's there. But other than that, I would say that, for the purpose and intents of, what's written in the law today, it seems to be, it meets most of the requirements, and it actually probably meets all the requirements.
Okay, I have another question for John, and that is when I mentioned having an ingress only and exit only for the Blaney Q-Mart building, is that something that can be determined at a later date, or is that something that we would be requesting tonight?
I believe we can request that tonight. We can make that as part of their operational plan, where the northern entrance of Building B of 10041 Blaney could be ingress, with the southern entrance being egress.
However, that being said, I would want to have a staff recommendation regarding that, and so that's why I'm a little hesitant to say yes, it should be done that way without having one of the engineers evaluating it. Okay, and then the other question was regarding the roofing material, if there's some way that we can make a request, and if staff supports it, I'm curious about that, to have the roofing materials coordinate, and if someone could pull up the street view of the Q-Mart as it exists today. So we're a little too far south here looking at World of Music, so you can't see the condition of the Q-Mart. I know that on Google Maps, if you do street view, it'll show up. Okay, so you're doing screen sharing. So, right, it's, I want to make sure it's the 10041 North Blaney address.
More, I can try that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Are you going to do it, Pew?
Yeah, let me try it.
Okay.
Commissioner Moore, can I make a comment to your comment?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think it is something that needs to be optimized. And to your comment, I think staff does need to look at it. And I think it is probably in conjunction with the traffic and the timing of the traffic. I think they probably are somewhat interrelated. So what I would recommend is that there be some caveat that looks at all of those elements in terms of that pickup and drop off, traffic pattern and traffic flow with the entrance and exits to provide the optimum solution. So not sure how we can structure it that way, but maybe as a default you have what's proposed, but have some level of reassessment to look at in more depth the flow, because none of us are traffic engineers, but you could see where maybe it'd be more efficient if there were two parallel right? But they're parking to drop off. So, you know, I think it really needs more of a professional look, but I think it does intersect with the traffic. So it should be lumped together.
Thank you, Commissioner Takahashi. And I have to say that, thank you, Planning Manager Pugh, for showing this, because when I'm looking at the driveway that's on the north, I actually am not happy with the way the driveway is oriented with regards to the first parking stall, which is parallel to Blaney, because it looks like it's the driveway is wider than the parking stall. And if a car was actually in the closest parking space to the back of sidewalk, you're actually going to have to drive around the back end of the vehicle to get in. And I don't have the parking plan, memorized. If we could toggle over back, I think John has the plan set to see if there's going to be any change to with regards to the driveway and the parking spaces which are there. And you'll see why. I think you saw that it doesn't line up nicely. Yeah. Okay, it looks like it does in this plan set, the driveway. So is there a different? Are you going to have a different curb cut? Because from Google Street View, it doesn't look like that.
Yeah, I do believe so. And again, this is, Public Works does have conditions of approval that do address the traffic flow patterns and whatnot. And again, this would go through their review as well. If I can make a recommendation to ensure this does go through, we could have a condition of approval to say that the driveway approach, subject to a Public Works review, to line up with the nearest parking stall, not to create some sort of conflict, if that makes sense.
Okay, so
it could also be structured to be, the traffic engineer can review this, that the Planning Commission desires this to be one way in and one way out,
yes,
pursuant to, traffic engineers review to figure out which one is ingress and which one is egress.
Yeah, and that could be all consolidated in one condition, correct?
Sorry, JP?
Yeah, that could all be consolidated into a single condition.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right. Okay. So I originally was asking to look at the street view image with regards to the condition of the roof. And if Planning Manager Pugh, if you could return that image so we could go back to that topic, I'd appreciate that.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Right. Would you please zoom in on that if you can, so we can see the plus sign on the bottom? I think will do it. On the lower right. Yeah. Let's try that. Yeah. Okay. That is what I'm referring to. And then, thank you. If you scroll to the left, we can see the building next to it. There. Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, so you get a sense for the condition of the roofing on both buildings, and I don't know if anyone shares my opinion on that, but I would like color to coordinate, or just the general condition, because the Q-Mart has been vacant for a long time, and if there was something, since they are opening the building and for beautification purposes, is there something that we can, see done here?
I believe so, Chair Moore. I do want to consult with the project architect, and I know Mr. House is in attendance, because I know the quality.
John?
Yes.
Oh, I am. I didn't know how to raise my hand on this thing. I do have a couple points. I mean, our original thinking was, because this is a much steeper roof and then a much more shallow sloped roof. So putting in a tile roof to match the other building isn't really feasible here for those reasons. The slopes are so different. But what we could do is put a lightweight kind of metal roof that's stamped to look like tile, and then that would look like a clay tile roof. So you'd basically get the same kind of flavor, but it wouldn't actually be the same clay tile because of this. It's so steep.
Okay, so I have seen some of these the faux metal clay tiles, and if it's what I recall seeing in Southern California, I would actually prefer, if we can state a preference, but I'd actually prefer the same look of the tiles which are already there, but to have the color coordinate at the least. And I'm hoping that I have some agreement from the other commissioners just to update the condition of that roof, and just, you know, try to do the best we can to improve the appearance. Do I have any other commissioners want to comment on the roofing?
My question was there any plan to update that? I don't think we read about it in terms of the remodel portion of that. So I don't know if that was presented to us. That's why I'm asking.
We were just saying replace in kind in general. That's what we did. But we can certainly, like I said, use something that's stamped that has more of a closer aesthetic to the tile. But it wouldn't be the tile, but the color and the texture would match. You know, we'd do our best to match it.
Right. Would that be something that staff would do a coordination with the architect, so that it would meet your design aesthetic approval?
Yes. So what we do is probably add a condition to the ASA resolution to the staff works with the applicant to coordinate a roof material on building A, between building A and building B, that would satisfy the desires of the planning commission.
All right. So if
say that it would match the color and texture and look of building A or building B.
Does that make sense if these buildings get separated out in the future with a different tenant? And is it all in the same parcel is my question. Sorry, so I didn't raise my hand.
Same parcel. GP, would you want to explain that?
Yeah, it's fine. They're different parcels. Yes, they are different parcels. Correct.
But the request that we're making right now would only be for the current project. So should it change, then, you know, they'd be able to make other changes. And I see that Commissioner Fung, you have your hand raised. Commissioner Fung?
I was just going to say, so one thing I wanted to do is confirm these will continue to be separate parcels then.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and as far as roofing goes, it looks to me like the old Q-Mart probably needs a new roof. I would be in support of having something that is more of a match. On the other hand, I don't think that I would want to require, you know, a reconstruction such that it was tile or anything like that. You know, I'd rather the buildings look different. I mean, you know, one is stucco, the other is brick. That's not going to change. So I think that it's to their benefit that they're harmonious, and that would be something you consider when re-roofing it. But otherwise, you know, I would just put minimal requirements on that. Thanks.
Okay. Any other commissioners have their hands raised this time? So it looks. Yes.
Sure, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, my only comment. I think I echo what Commissioner Fung is saying here. I part of this, like, I'm really excited that there's going to be a center here. I don't want to impose any additional financial burdens on them. Though this looks like it used to be an old 7-Eleven, I can't tell. But they probably look like they do need to replace the roof at some point, and hopefully, if the daycare does successful, they'll have the funds to actually do the remodel.
So it looks like we possibly have some agreement on the ASA having a statement to coordinate the roofing with limited requirements. And I see Commissioner Saxena has his hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Commissioner Fung and Vice Chair Ray said. I think if they anyway are planning to redo the roof, it would be good to have harmony, whatever is architecturally feasible. but I wouldn't want to impose it as a requirement for approval. That's it.
Could staff clarify that in the documents it states that they will be replacing the roof?
Not in the staff report. We just mentioned specifically the seismic upgrades. Typically, to repair a roof, it's not really a discretionary permit. You know, if it's in kind, as the architect has said, it's considered maintenance more than anything else.
Okay, so just do you feel that simply by noting that we like it to look harmonious and it's our understanding that they intend to replace the roof, that do you feel that that's all we need to do, or do we need to go so far? And maybe this is a question for our attorney. Do we need to go so far as to put it in the ASA? And then once we've settled that, we have the issue with the driveway approaches item.
So before Seth answers, if he plans on doing that, I think it's when the Plan Commission's purview to require, minimally to have the applicant work with staff to coordinate at least the colors of the roof materials and whatnot, if that's what the Plan Commission desires. In terms of having the city's traffic engineer and Public Works Department look at the feasibility of having the directional modifications to the drop-off area, that's within the realm of the Planning Commission discretion as well. At least that's my understanding. If Seth, if you feel differently, feel free.
No, I agree with John. I haven't been privy to the conversations between the city and the applicant, so this sort of thing could be done on a sort of encouragement basis, but it can also be done as part of the CUP, or in this case, the ASA.
If I might add, the condition could be worded to say that if they do make any modifications to the roof in the form of repairs or maintenance of repairs and replacement, then that the design aesthetic could be such that it matches the neighboring building.
Okay, and I see that the architect would like to speak. Did you have a comment, Mr. House?
Well, other than what I just said about the metal roofing that's formed like a tile, that's all I have.
All right. So that's something that, if we agree to add that into the ASA, that we can have you coordinate with staff, and we, it sounds as though we're pretty comfortable with leaving it as a discussion between staff, and that we do not want to be dictating what roofing material specifically that you're using. And I have some commissioners' hands raised. Vice Chair Wong?
Yeah, I have a question for staff, and I did go by here, and I can't remember if there's any other speed bumps. I'm going to share something on the screen. This area right here, I forgot how to point here. Let me do that. But if you can see, let me draw right here. Yeah, so this area right here, do we know if that's in between the two properties? Is that a speed bump, or is that just paint?
I don't recall. To be honest with you, I didn't keep an eye out for the speed bump when I did my site visits. But judging by the conversations between the applicant and the neighboring property owner, it seems like there isn't any speed deterrent between through the easement. And maybe Devin, the applicant, can confirm or that.
There is a speed bump.
My perspective on that. Yep.
Okay, that is a speed bump. Okay. I think it's important that there is something there, given that it's kids going through it. And I did notice people were going a little bit faster than normal, but I didn't see any other cars like racing through. I just thinking, given the fact that we're giving a permit for a preschool, I think it's important to think about child safety. That's all.
Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Fung?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on these two items, one regarding the roof and the other regarding perhaps having a different traffic plan for the drop-off area. I think in both these cases, we're probably best served by asking that the applicant work with the city on that before they complete their final plans. And I think that we'll probably get a good result. You know, it's an interesting thing. We've had a couple mentions here of having metal roofing that looks like tile. So that may actually turn out to be not as good if it were just metal roof. So, you know, I feel comfortable that if what we ask for is that this come, you know, that the applicant work with the city on this, and that we'll be okay with, you know, the result as long as it was reviewed. I think that will be fine. Thanks.
Vice Chair Wong?
Yeah, I would agree with that, right? I mean, in this case, a standing seam metal roof may actually work better and be cheaper and more cost effective. I think that's where Commissioner Fung was headed. So I'm just guessing. So.
Okay, on that, when I look at the ASA, let's see, item 2B, we have in order to preserve design harmony between new and existing buildings and in order to preserve and enhance property values, the materials, textures, and colors of new buildings should harmonize with adjacent development by being consistent or compatible with design and color schemes. So, I mean, that's talking about new buildings. We're not putting in a new building. We've got potential, you know, remodel, rework of the roof of an existing building. So I think perhaps because we've delved into this topic of design harmony, if there's a way that, as a suggestion, if there's a way that our attorney could add in just some very gentle wording regarding the change to the roof to the ASA 2B paragraph, you know, I'd be happy with that. And I agree that the pressed Spanish tile roofing might not be what any of us is hoping for. You know, I would be, you know, personally happy with something that just simply coordinates color-wise or has less, doesn't draw your eye to it as much as what we're looking at now. And then the second part is with regards to the driveway. You know, we can go either way, but if we request for a review from Public Works and that we want them to do those directional modifications, you know, what do we lose if we don't put that in writing? Okay, and I see that Attorney Seth Petta, you have your hand raised. Seth?
Yeah, hi, responding to the chair's comment. So I think the change would be made in the conditions of approval, which is section 2 of the ASA, not the finding, so not the paragraph B. And I think that language it should be supplied by staff.
Okay, so Seth, could you point to where I need to be looking for where that insert would go?
Well, I think it's not there yet, but John, correct me if I'm wrong. We're talking about a new condition, right?
Yeah, you would just add a condition of approval in the ASA. Probably want to do 2. One that deals with the design change to the building, which would accomplish the roof, and then you could have another one that would talk about the modification to the entrance to the Blaney building, and how it should be reviewed by the city engineer or the city's traffic engineer and public works department for all of what we've discussed.
Okay, so the question would be, you know, whether or not we have, you know, a group agreement about those 2 items and adding those in. And then if we do have the group agreement, then it would be a question for providing the language, which would be, you know, as I said previously, you know, gentle language to not be didactic about what the solution would be, but leave it to staff in order to, you know, work with the applicant, but to let it be known that we want that to happen. We want the, you know, harmonious, the roofing, and then we want to have the driveway entrance addressed. And in particular with regards to the curb cut looking like it's clipping the first stalls. Commissioner Fung.
Along with that, I think that we do need to make an adjustment in the other document in U 2019-006. Item 6 actually includes the children's pickup and drop off plan. And that one actually does call for 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. for morning drop off time. I don't think that we, I think that we want to encourage them to consider widening that band to get out of the heavy traffic time for Collins School, but not put a requirement on that it be at a particular time. So I would actually suggest maybe to change that to say, to change it to a range including 7:45 till 10 a.m. or 8 a.m. until 10 a.m. And that would be sufficient to address the issue around peak traffic time.
Do we get to comment on that? Can we address?
These are the honors. The project honors.
Attorney?
It's up to the chair.
All right. Yes, please. You speak to that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Devin?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let's have the video on.
Thank you.
Hi, since I'm dealing with the operations in the Santa Clara Center, Devin wanted me to talk about that. We are open at 8:30 over there and close at 6:30. But in my experience so far, we never had more than 10 children dropped off between 8:30 to 9. Because again, Vidyaramp is a daycare center. It's not a school. There is no mandated drop off or pickup time. It's a daycare. Parents have the flexibility to drop off any time between the operational hours and pick up at any time between the operational hours. So in my experience, there are very less children between 8:30 to 9, and then 9 to 9:30, there are a lot more coming in, and we have drop-offs as late as 11:30, and we don't question that. It's up to the parents' convenience.
Just to add to that, most of our parents are software engineers who have flexible work time too. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you. And I see that Vice Chair Wong, you have your hand raised.
I do for the applicants. By putting it in the document, you are limiting yourself to an 8:30 start time when you actually have business hours that can begin at 7 if you want to. So it's just more of, do you want to put that kind of self-imposed restriction on yourself? If it was me, I wouldn't want that unless I really needed that there. That's I think, why we're raising the question.
Oh, yeah, I understand. Sorry about that. Yeah, we can put it as 7. Right now, we are operating at 8:30, but there are some parents requesting us to open at 8, and we are definitely considering that in Santa Clara. That might happen here too. It depends on the need of the parents. If they want us to open earlier, if we can, we will definitely consider that. And having the flexibility to open anytime from 7 o'clock does definitely help.
Chair Moore, if I may have a moment to speak. The condition number 6 talks about a traffic monitor being available between those times. It doesn't limit the operations from occurring between 7 a.m. and the regular times that the general commercial ordinance allows them to operate in.
Okay, so what you're saying is that it's your understanding that we do not need to modify item 6. So currently, it mentions the following hours of operation: 8:30 to 10 a.m.
Right,
12:30 to 3:30. Okay.
Right, that there would just be a traffic monitor present during those times. It doesn't say that they only get to start at 8:30.
Okay. So they are not limited to start at 7. If they want to start
of
at
8:30, correct.
Okay.
However, you cannot, even if you did stagger that and you said that hours of operation are from 7 a.m., you can't compel parents from dropping off kids at 7 a.m. just because the hours of operation start at 7.
You can't, but
they wish to drop off, and it might be convenient to drop off one kid at 8:30 at this preschool and then another kid at Collin at 8:40. So it's a matter of figuring out what works best, but that's entirely up to the users of the operation.
Commissioner Fung, and then Vice Chair Wong. Commissioner Fung?
So I actually just to speak back to the applicants on this one, I think that the only reason I bring this up is because the situation you have here, you're across the street from a pretty busy elementary school, and that's maybe different than your situation in Santa Clara. I guess if we're granting conditional use here and allowing that to operate during the normal times for use in that period, then there is no reason to adjust it. But it's just the fact that that set of numbers in there for traffic monitoring happen to match the hours that were called out in the staff report as the drop-off times. I think that what happens is, you actually have a long window afterwards. Somebody can come at 9 o'clock. There won't be any traffic or, any significant traffic at that time. But I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a limitation that said, hey, if you decide for this place to be successful, you'd like to have people dropping off at 8. I just didn't want that to be something that was being prevented. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Fung. Vice Chair Wong?
I'm good. He said the same thing I needed to say.
I do have a question with regards to drainage, since we are looking at this document. We aren't requiring any bioretention ponds for the landscaping. Is that the case?
We will leave the C3 standards to Public Works to review, and from what I could tell, I checked if I go to their resolution really quick, take a look. Sorry, I have like 10 things open in my C3 standards would. So they do talk about drainage here, and that the Public Works Department will be reviewing that as condition 4 under the Public Works conditions of approval under the use permit resolution. And
okay, so that will be handled.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So it looks like we possibly have some agreement regarding the coordination of the roofing and the statement about the with regards to the traffic with the entrance. Okay, so if we could have the perhaps where we need to insert this language in these agreements.
Chair Moore, I see Commissioner Takahashi's hand up. If you wish.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Takahashi. Thank you.
Yeah, just I guess I was looking for a relatively easy solution for the traffic that really is. I mean, we're anticipating, and you don't know until you actually have both facilities and the facility and the school open, and so that's why something that just allows the city some flexibility to work with the applicant in the event that traffic is deemed an issue. Given the clientele of software engineers, they do tend to start work around 10 p.m. generally speaking. So I can. That's consistent, I guess, with the behavior of that workforce. But I think it's just a matter of a simple wording about if in the event that there is a traffic issue, other than the entrance potential conflict with the parked car, I think everything else ties to traffic and flow. And so I would just recommend something straightforward about, in other words, going through a big study when we don't know if it's going to be an issue yet, I think is might not be the best path forward versus how's it working out. And if it's working out fine, then there's no issue. But if it is, then the city can come back and work with the applicant to optimize. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Takahashi. Do we have any further hands raised? Okay, Commissioner Fung.
Yeah, so I'll just echo that and say that we can make things complicated and expensive. I would hope not to do that. Given the state of the world today, it's great that somebody is trying to make this a useful part of the community again. Rather than spend money on trying to guess at how you're requiring them to spend money on guessing how the traffic will turn out. I'd rather, that may be money that you can actually use, to address, the fence issues and things like that. If that's something down the line, I think that there was a good faith attempt here to try to do the right thing. I think that asking that to come back for review with the city before the final approval of their plans is a reasonable thing to do. And, I hope we can have this happen. Thanks.
Are there any further hands raised from the commissioners? All right, and then, so my question would be, how do we ensure that we get the roof coordination that we're looking for? And how do we ensure that we get the driveway and the parking spaces addressed, to our liking? And so I don't want it to turn out that, at the end of the day, we're not going to, that the roof stays the same, or that the driveway is misaligned with the parking, and that, and we get ingress egress on both driveways when it turns out that, that really isn't the best solution. So do we need to nail it down, put it in writing, or are we, will staff have the ability to negotiate and have these things happen without us putting it in writing now? So that might be a question for staff or John, I'm not really sure.
John, I can start unless you want to.
No, go ahead, Seth.
Okay, well, I hope my advice, if it does, I would suggest if you want to make sure these things are at least considered, you should put them in writing as conditions. And you had asked earlier where they would go. They would just be added to either of the two permits as a new condition. And I think John or Pew can recommend which one they would go into. I think roofing would obviously go into the ASA. But it's up to you how sort of, prescriptive or suggestive you want the language to be. And there I might defer to staff, because you've probably drafted conditions in the past that leave subsequent conversation with the applicant open as an open item.
Yeah, no, I agree with Seth. I think both items could be, or both issues could be addressed within the ASA resolution. If that's what's agreed upon by the Planning Commission, to add those concerns to be mitigated by staff. To Steph's point, we can leave it as flexible as you want, and for us to take the lead. And we've have precedent for that, through prior permits, or you can be as specific as you want with us too. I mean, that's, there is flexibility in drafting these conditions of approval, and whatever the comfort is with the Planning Commission for those.
Okay, so if it's agreeable, I personally, I would be looking for more flexible language. I think that's what we're hearing from the Planning Commission. If we're going to have the language at all, that it needs to be flexible, and definitely flexible on the roof. I'm a little more concerned about the driveway coordination there. But if you could be coming up with the language to insert, and then we can see how the commission feels about that. That would be good. And you're saying to add it on to the ASA.
Yeah.
Is that something we
So
can
Chair
do now?
Moore, are you suggesting that we have the language written up right now for your consideration?
Yes, it sounds like it would just be a one sentence for each. And I think, John had started basically verbally drafting it. The applicant would coordinate the roofing with staff, I believe, and the driveway approach should be subject to review by the city engineer, or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, if I could draft it up at a later time, but just given this direction from the Planning Commission, we typically don't do draft conditions of approval on the dais, but a wording for, wording for the roof could be, in the event that the applicant, that the developer will be removing and replacing the roof for maintenance, that staff work with the applicant or staff work with the developer to ensure a design that is consistent, or colors that are consistent with the other building that is part of the project. So something along those lines. In terms of the driveway approach, it could be something that the driveway approach should be Staff should work with the applicant to ensure that the driveway approach does not conflict with any existing parking spaces, and if feasible, to consider a one-way ingress egress between the two driveways, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me. I see some hands are raised. Commissioner Takahashi, you're first.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate, I think we want to leave it in staff's hands to resolve all these to their satisfaction, because I think through this meeting, they've got a clear understanding of what the concerns are of the Planning Commission. So that was my only point.
Thank you, Commissioner Takahashi. Next, we have our city attorney, Seth Feta.
Thanks. I was just going to quickly point out that I believe it's condition of approval 3 for fencing, and the ASA may provide sort of a template for what we're talking about, although it uses the word shall regarding what the applicant should do. That could be softened, and this next sentence says that the community development director will approve that plan before a building permit issue. So I think that's an approach that John's language could be adapted to, if you agree, John.
I agree.
Okay, and we need to consider, Commissioner Takahashi is suggesting that we make it known that staff is doing this coordination, that it's not returning to us, that this is something that the staff will be working with the owner, the developer regarding. And I also see Commissioner Fung.
Yeah, I would just concur with Commissioner Takahashi on this. I think that staff has got the idea of what we have in mind, even though, if we all tried to say exactly, specifically what we agreed on, I think that, I don't have an issue leaving this to be, to be in the hands of staff. And I believe that there is a consensus on the commission for that as well, to not be more restrictive than that.
Okay. Do I have any further hands raised? Commissioner Saxena.
Yeah, I will echo Commissioner Fung's comments. I think we should recommend, but not make it restrictive, and help them come on board. We are in tough times, and we don't want to make things too restrictive.
Great. I think we agree with that. So are we able to add the language in tonight for that? Do we feel comfortable providing flexible language?
I think staff knows the intent of the Planning Commission's consensus, and that's something if the Planning Commission is comfortable, we can craft this week prior to the chair signing off on the resolution on a later date, if that's agreeable.
All right, Seth. So how would this work if we're putting the language in the hands of staff to provide staff and you, the attorney. So you're going to provide this language, and then we would vote on this, and it would be once it's completed, I sign off on it, and is that how this is going to work?
Yeah. So tonight, once deliberations close, someone will make a motion. The motion likely will lay out the 3 different actions across the 2 different permits. So first you would address the use permit. The first action in that permit is the CEQA exemption finding. That has to come first. Then the approval of the use permit, then the approval of the ASA. And you, I believe, and I'm seeing my internet connection is unstable. Can you all hear me? Still? Okay, good. And we would just want to make sure that the amendments we've been talking about that are now in the record would apply to whichever permit they apply to. I believe, John, you've said the ASA, so you could make mention in motion that as directed by the commission, and to be carried out by staff. And then you second the motion, vote, and then I believe, Chair Moore, you asked about the next step. I'm not usually involved in that, but my understanding is, and perhaps the prior chair can fill you in, the resolution is signed once it comes back to your desk. and you'd have an opportunity to just confirm that the language appears there.
Yeah, that is correct. You can review it again. If there's any changes, you don't have to sign that or make sure that it's correct before it's signed.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And Commissioner Fung?
Commissioner Fung, you're on mute.
I don't know. I think I'm ready to make a motion on this. If you're ready to accept it at this time.
Well, if we're going to insert the language, our motion would be to find it exempt from secret. We do all three, but the third for the ASA. Are we breaking these down into three different parts where we're going to make a motion to approve to find that it's secret exempt, et cetera, and then a second motion to approve the use permit, and then a third, then vote on those two, and then a third would be regarding the ASA with provided that modifications from staff regarding the roof and the driveway are integrated in that agreement. Is that how we're doing it, or is it all as one?
I think we're going to have to
we should approve all three, but I don't think we need to actually insert insert specific text. What we're going to do is we're going to give a direction that the Planning Commission would like to see that there be review as we specified in these two areas regarding traffic and regarding the visual appearance of the roofing, and that's what we'll, I don't know that we need to, craft the language now and fight about it. I don't think there's a big disagreement here.
Well, I believe that when I asked staff in order to ensure that those things would happen, that putting it in writing was the recommendation. And I see that Attorney Seth, you have a comment?
Well, I actually had a different understanding of what staff was saying there. I thought that the comment from staff was that we don't address conditions of approval on the dais, but maybe I misunderstood John. But the comment I was going to make was actually that I'm not recommending three different motions, but rather two. There's two permits. There's this, the CEQA finding is part of the use permit. So you'd make a motion to approve the use permit and then a separate motion to approve the ASA. And I think that would be clearer as to which permit the amendments apply to, and in this case, the ASA. But John, maybe you want to address the conditions question.
Maybe.
So I do have some draft conditions written between Pew and I, going back and forth on this. If you'd like, I can read those draft conditions if that helps. Okay, so let me just log back in. I'm sorry for any confusion. That's right here. Let's see. Okay, so the first one would read, in this regards to the roofing, the applicant will work with staff to coordinate a roofing material and or colors similar to the roofing on building B, part of the project, if roofing is replaced and or repaired. The Director of Community Development shall approve prior to issuing building permits. So that's in regards to the roof. The second condition of approval, draft condition of approval, would be for the driveway issues that the commission has discussed recently. So the applicant will work with staff to ensure that the driveway at 10041 North Blaney Avenue property does not conflict with any parking stalls, and whether the driveways need to be made one-way ingress to ensure that there's better traffic flow at the discretion of the city's traffic engineer. So those are some just off the cuff draft conditions of approval. If that sounds okay with you, staff, I think that should be good enough for the planning commission to make a motion on if you feel fit.
We're just trying to capture the essence of what you're trying to achieve. And this may not be the final wording, but we want to make sure that that's what the commission agrees on in general.
I find that it is capturing what we have discussed. Do I have some agreement from the other commissioners regarding this? Just
yes.
Commissioner Takahashi, yes.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I actually disagree. I think it's overly restrictive, but I think it's sufficient to say that these things need to come back for review as part of the approval process. But either way.
So I have a comment here. I'm not muted. Commissioner Fung, this is the final approval.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
All right. Commissioner Saxena, did you want to speak on this? Okay.
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay. So is someone prepared to make a motion regarding the use permit regarding the CEQA exemption?
Yeah, well,
I'll certainly do that. I move that. Let's see. Where's the text for that? In this
U 2019-006 is the use permit.
Okay.
and
Yes.
draft resolution ASA 2019-010.
Well, but we're going to do that one is separate. So.
Yep. Okay.
So I move that we adopt, that we approve application U 2019-006 as presented. And that would be.
That would be at second. So.
Okay. My only concern with that is that I believe we need to bundle in that we find the approval of the project as exempt from CEQA and approve the use permit U-2019.
That's true. I guess that might have been in the staff report. Yes, and that we find this, let's see, exempt from CEQA and to adopt U 2019-006 as presented.
Right. All right. And we have a second?
There's a second, yes.
We have a second. All right. So, Madam Clerk, will you conduct the vote?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vice Chair Wong?
Yes. So.
Commissioner Fung?
Yes.
Commissioner Saxena?
Yes.
Commissioner Takahashi?
Yay.
And Chair Moore?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right. And do we have a motion to approve the architectural and site approval ASA-2019-010 with the modifications stated by staff, which if John could repeat
Sure.
the additions?
Sure. Let me pull up my email. Sorry. Okay. The first one has to do with the roofing. The applicant will work with staff to coordinate a roofing material and/or color similar to the roofing on Building B, part of the project. If roofing is replaced and or repaired, the Director of Community Development shall approve prior to issuance of building permits. Second condition would be the applicant will work with staff to ensure the driveway at 10041 North Blaney Avenue property does not conflict with any parking stalls and whether the driveways need to be made one-way ingress egress to ensure that there's better traffic flow at the discretion of the city's traffic engineer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So actually, I'll do this. So I need to get the paperwork back up. Hold on. Okay, I move that we approve the architectural and site approval ASA-2019-010 with the modifications provided by John Martire. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, will you conduct the vote?
Thank you, Chair Moore. Vice Chair Wong?
Aye.
Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Saxena?
Aye.
Commissioner Takahashi?
Aye.
And Chair Moore?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. So that concludes the public hearing. Item 2, we have no old business, no new business. Do we have staff and commission reports?
No, Madam Chair, there are no staff reports at this time. We're just hoping that we can get through this shelter in place, and as this is our first planning commission meeting in this format, as you can tell, it's not easy to conduct a meeting like this, and we hope to get out of this as soon as possible.
Oh. Thank you, Planning Manager Pugh, and really thank you everyone for bearing up with our first experience with our Zoom meeting, and seeing no further staff and commission reports, our meeting is adjourned. Good night.